all negotiations with Iran and launching what's called the Economic D-Day campaign. So why stop all negotiations so suddenly? What exactly triggered Trump to do this? Yes, something did happen. Also, what is this Economic D-Day campaign? How will it work? What are the consequences? That's our topic for today. Additionally, for Chinese real estate tycoon Xu Jian, the other shoe is finally dropped. 3 years ago, he essentially lost his freedom. And today's news is he's been sentenced to life in prison on 8 major charges. But to give you my conclusion first, these 8 charges are all nonsense. He only committed one crime. What is it? Well, Feng Wei will tell you today. Also, from the ultra-rich to ordinary citizens, people are fleeing China. Overseas Chinese are too scared to return. What's happened in just 10 days? What's the situation? Feng Wei will give you a report on that today as well. Furthermore, the U.S. is deporting illegal immigrants at an incredible rate, but many of the methods are unknown to the public. Today, Feng Wei will explain that in detail for you. Welcome to Good Morning America with Feng Wei. Hello to our YouTube viewers and our listeners on Sandaho, Silicon Valley FM 96.1. Alright, let's get into it. First, President Trump announced Wednesday that he's halting all negotiations with Iran. At the same time, he announced an economic D-Day campaign against them. What is D-Day? D-Day was June 6, 1944, when the Allies launched the landings on the coast of Normandy, France, which aided Nazi Germany a year later. President Trump wrote on Truth Social, "No one has given the Islamic Republic of Iran a better chance to reach a deal than I have." But unfortunately for them, they failed to seize that opportunity. Therefore, I'm announcing today the most devastating economic action ever taken against any nation. It will be economic warfare and isolation on an unprecedented scale. Their navy is no longer in existence. Their air force is destroyed, their military factories are in ruins, their currency is worthless, and their country's crumbling. Trump said, "Today, I am announcing that we will take this action, an economic war of unprecedented scale." At the same time, he issued a stern warning to any country trying to provide a lifeline to Iran. Any nation that allows its financial institutions, businesses, airports, or government entities to support Iran in any way will face massive economic consequences themselves. This includes oil smuggling, swap lines, cash transfers, exchange houses, ship registries, shell companies, shadow tankers, and all of that. President Trump said, "All of this must stop immediately. You know who you are." This will be an economic D-Day. We need all our allies to stand with the United States to isolate and defeat the threat from Iran. President Trump said, "These madmen are in a desperate situation. These historic blows will paralyze them and destroy their ability to spread terror around the world." As we all know, the U.S. began a naval blockade of Iran on April 13th, and it's been 130 days now. Earlier this week, the Iranian foreign minister, Baghai, accused the United States of relying on economic blockades when diplomacy fails, calling it an addiction, and warned neighboring Gulf states not to assist the U.S. military. So, how did the Gulf states react? First, because Iran continues to launch missile attacks, the UAE on Wednesday, the same day as Trump's announcement, cut off all financial and economic ties with Iran. So President Trump finally said that the U.S. might resume negotiations with Tehran at some point in the future, but not right now. And he said that the Strait of Hormuz will no longer be as important as it was in the past, because many countries are exploring alternative oil sources. Okay, next I'll share some comments on Trump's economic Normandy campaign, 5 points in total. First, Trump is clearly shifting from a siege to a blockade. If Iran attacks U.S. or allied vessels, the U.S. will definitely strike back, but likely not with a full-scale military operation. The reason is that the strategy has shifted from an assault to a blockade. Second, continuous strikes have likely blinded Iran's radar detection along the coast of the Strait of Hormuz. Now, for these oil tankers, if they turn off their lights and transponders at night, the ships just keep moving while broadcasting their identity along the way. Such tankers can pass through the strait smoothly under U.S. naval escort, remaining invisible to Iran. So, the U.S. Energy Secretary said a week ago that the U.S. can now move 9 million barrels a day through the Strait of Hormuz, and it's very likely he was telling the truth. Also, in this situation, the supply and demand for oil are becoming more stable. Today, Brent crude oil rose by over $1, reaching $93, right? So you could say $93 is still an increase, isn't it? Trump announced the Normandy campaign, the economic Normandy campaign, and oil prices only rose by $1.30. This in itself shows stability, and the foundation of this stability is definitely the global supply and demand of oil. Only with stable supply and demand can there be stability. Once they become unstable, you won't be able to hold it together no matter what. That's the second point. Third, President Trump said he's given up on all negotiations. I think my interpretation is that it stems from one thing. A few days ago, President Trump said we found a dialogue channel with the Revolutionary Guard behind the Iranian negotiators, who are the actual ones in power in Iran. We have a direct path. And then the Revolutionary Guard came right out and said Trump was lying, that it never existed. So for Trump, these people just lied through their teeth. To him, they're complete lunatics, people with no credibility. This denial completely infuriated Trump, or rather, it taught him a lesson that he simply cannot deal with them. So cutting off all negotiations, I think that's actually a good thing. Fourth, what is the true essence of this Normandy campaign? It's actually secondary sanctions, meaning whoever helps Iran, I will sanction them. And in this, of course, the real targets are two countries, Russia and the Chinese Communist Party. They will definitely help. So, will Trump dare to impose secondary sanctions? This is a major issue. When Xi Jinping visits the United States on September 24th at the Trump-Xi summit, Trump will surely put immense pressure on him. But we also know that Xi will definitely say he agrees, but then go back and do nothing. He'll just play Dota. As the saying goes, what goes around comes around. So why is Trump being so nice to Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un? I'll get to that in a bit. Anyway, that's the current situation. Okay, the fifth comment. Why is U.S. crude oil production so high, yet domestic oil and gas prices are so expensive? For Trump's midterm elections, isn't the biggest factor affecting his approval ratings energy or gas prices? Since U.S. crude production is so high, why not just sell it domestically? If you block it with export tariffs, wouldn't it stay in the domestic market? This was a question raised by one of my viewers. It's a good question, and many people are wondering about this. Trump can't do that because crude oil prices are part of an integrated global market. The U.S. Constitution has a clause that prevents export tariffs on companies, so Trump has no way to stop oil from flowing out. Since Brent crude is higher on the global market, oil traders, seeking profit, will sell their oil abroad. So U.S. oil prices are always linked to international ones. Therefore, the prerequisite for U.S. gas prices to drop is for global crude prices to drop first. That's why Trump can't use abundant U.S. oil to lower domestic gas prices. Okay, now let's take a look at Trump's North Korea strategy. Just recently, didn't Trump give South Korea a hard time? And then he told reporters that he might meet with Kim Jong-un later this year. The reporters were naturally very excited, asking exactly when the meeting would be. What's the deal? Then Trump said North Korea now has, I'll call it North Korea. The CCP likes people to call it Chosun, but I often say North Korea. It's the same thing. Reporters noted North Korea has 57 nuclear weapons, as Trump said yesterday, and is expanding its nuclear program. If you engage Kim Jong-un again, is your goal still the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula? Trump didn't answer directly, saying he didn't want to discuss that, but that he has a great relationship with Kim. So let me interpret that. It means denuclearization is impossible, but Kim won't use them because he wouldn't dare cross me while I'm president. He then added that Kim doesn't like Biden, Obama, or anyone else, but he likes me. So Trump's attitude toward Kim has sparked a lot of criticism, including from many Chinese people and democracy activists, because he treats enemies as friends and friends as enemies. Kim is a dictator, and you like each other? What's going on with you two? Canada is a neighbor and longtime ally, yet he's pushing him so hard. These 2 days are the final tariff negotiations. Isn't this confusing, friends and foes? Well, let me tell you, I understand that interpretation, but it's actually incorrect. Trump is an unconventional person, and his diplomatic moves are unconventional. You can't judge him by standard methods. Let's look at what I've observed regarding Trump's true approach to Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping. You know, besides saying nice things about Kim Jong-un, Has he given him a single cent? Since they started talking in 2017, he hasn't given him a dime. He even got back the remains of U.S. soldiers from the Korean War and still didn't give Kim Jong-un a penny. So, what was the result? Remember Kim Jong-un? Near the end of Obama's presidency, North Korea fired missiles right next to Hawaii, forcing them to hold air defense drills. Do you remember that? When Trump first entered the White House, Obama told him during their meeting that his biggest headache was Kim Jong-un. That little thug kept launching missiles over Japan and even toward the United States. So, is that still happening today? No, it's not, right? So the direct threat from Kim Jong-un to the US and Japan has been eliminated. He's not acting out now, and what did Trump have to give up? Or what did the US pay? Just a few nice words from Trump. As for Canada, it looks like things have been settled there. The deadline was Wednesday, then extended by 3 days, so it's clearly settled. Carney has basically given up on the agricultural tariffs against US farmers. So Trump isn't just picking a fight with Canada for no reason. He's trying to fix the unfair trade imbalance between the US and Canada. Then there's Europe. People say he's treating friends like enemies. Although Trump has challenged and even scolded Europe, the US military hasn't withdrawn, right? He just made a gesture by pulling out a few troops, but the main force is still there. And now Europe is paying for its own defense to become self-reliant. How did that happen? Wasn't it just Trump's harsh words that made it happen? There's a phrase in English called tough love. It's like a father being strict for the child's own good. So, as you can see, my take is that Trump is basically playing Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping. They value their relationship with the US president, especially with Trump, and they see it as a point of pride. That's true for Kim Jong-un and for Xi Jinping. It's not just pride, it's political capital to maintain his power within the party. Trump knows exactly how to leverage his reputation and the value of his so-called friendship. So, as you can see, Trump has been constantly blindsiding the CCP and Xi Jinping. After their meeting in Busan, South Korea in May, the US continued to impose sanctions and China retaliated. Both sides are still fighting hard behind the scenes. On the surface, Trump keeps calling him a good friend. This makes Xi Jinping cautious and protective of his reputation for managing US-China relations, which secures the standing in the party. As a result, no matter how much pressure is put on the CCP, Xi Jinping doesn't dare to break ties. This is the result of his truly unconventional diplomacy. Do you agree with my perspective? It's okay if you don't. Feel free to leave a comment. That's just how I see it. If you look at Trump's diplomatic tactics through the lens of traditional diplomacy, you'd certainly be frowning. But Trump has never been a traditional president. He's never even been a county councilman or held any office. Going from a real estate developer to the president of the United States, he naturally brings an unconventional approach. He simply doesn't know what the rules or conventions are. So, of course, it's not really unconventional, but it comes across as unconventional. All right, so what do you think about Trump's views on Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un, as well as his views on Canada and Europe? Do you think he's right or wrong? Feel free to leave a comment, okay? Let's see what everyone's thoughts are. Now, a major news story in China today is that Xu Jiayan has been sentenced to life in prison. Okay, so what is the essence of this case exactly? The CCP arrested the Chinese real estate tycoon Xu Jiayan. Well, I shouldn't say arrested, but he lost his freedom. Who knows if he was locked up or put under house arrest? After waiting for 3 years, the other shoe is finally dropped. The Shenzhen Intermediate People's Court announced the first instance verdict in the Evergrande series of cases. Xu Jiayan, as the founder and actual controller of Evergrande, was sentenced to life imprisonment, deprived of political rights for life, and had all personal property confiscated. The court found him guilty of 8 major crimes, including things like illegal absorption of public deposits. I'll get into those specific charges later. I'll do a special segment on that. Anyway, 8 major crimes. Then the Evergrande Group was fined $1.3 billion. Evergrande Real Estate was fined 88 billion yuan and another 70 billion yuan. This is one of the highest criminal fines ever imposed on a company in Chinese judicial history. In addition, his 2 sons were also sentenced in the same case. The eldest son, Xu Zhijian, and the second son, Xu Tenghe, were both sentenced to fixed-term imprisonment. Furthermore, 56 related personnel were sentenced to terms ranging from 18 years to 22 months. The entire Evergrande leadership was wiped out. So, what are the core facts of this case? The court found what it called continuous large-scale financial fraud, which caused particularly serious social harm and particularly significant economic losses. It said that between 2019 and 2020, he inflated revenue by 560 billion yuan and inflated profits by 92 billion yuan. This is the largest financial fraud in the history of China's capital market. Evergrande's accumulated debt reached 2.4 trillion yuan. It said his criminal activities spanned from 2016 to 2021, including bribery to gain control of financial institutions, illegal lending, and so on. Well, basically, everyone should already know about the Evergrande situation, right? Even though many of my viewers are in the US, I'll give a brief overview. So in China, there's currently a massive real estate bubble that has been growing larger and larger over the past few decades. Many real estate companies like Evergrande rely on high debt and high leverage, borrowing money to operate and racing against time to turn a profit. So they're often insolvent, but as long as the bubble doesn't burst, they can keep issuing new debt to pay off the old, staying afloat and profiting from the spread. Then, in August 2020, Xi Jinping introduced the 3 red lines policy, which stopped them from using leverage and essentially burst the bubble. Xu Jian's company was the first to be exposed. So I have 3 comments on this. I actually posted 3 tweets, and I'll read them to you to see if you think they make sense. I posted 3 tweets. The first one says, it's truly a modern version of watching him build a high tower, watching him host grand banquets, and then watching his tower crumble. This is from the late Qing dynasty. It's called the Lotus fan, right? The peach blossom fan, the Lotus fan. Anyway, it's a very famous quote. The trendsetters in communist China are often playing with their lives because it's a very dangerous country. How is it dangerous? I'll explain that in a moment. I'm gonna present a case to vindicate Xu Jian today, okay? You know Xu Jian, trying to vindicate him, this guy is really just so outrageous. Xu Jian was sentenced to life, and his 2 sons were implicated as well. He started a real estate in 1994 and was imprisoned in 2023, 28, 29 years in total. He was basically doing the same thing the whole time. So why did the party and government never go after him, but now they've pounced with all these charges? Well, these charges, the 8 major crimes, include illegal absorption of public deposits. What does that even mean? It means taking money out of the bank as loans, right? Fundraising fraud, illegal lending, fraudulent issuance of securities, illegal disclosure or non-disclosure of important information, corporate bribery, and then illegal use of funds, embezzlement, and so on. Just business stuff, right? You know, where does all of this actually come from? Let me translate it for you. So the CCP, starting in the 1990s and 2000s, found that real estate speculation could drive the economy, so they opened up policies and loosened regulations, letting people like Xu Jian, who were bold and clever, do whatever they wanted, calling it stimulating the economy. Basically, they used them to blow up a massive real estate bubble. Then, one night in August 2020, I'm just using an analogy here, Xi Jinping had finished dinner and had nothing to do, and he accidentally, out of the corner of his eye, saw this big real estate bubble. So he found a needle, and this needle was called Houses Are for Living In, Not for Speculation. Houses Are for Living, Not for Speculation. The 3 red lines. The 3 red lines. That was the name of the needle. And then he poked the bubble. He originally just wanted to poke it to reshape the bubble, but he didn't expect the bubble to just go pop and burst. The first one to emerge all soaked was that guy, Xu Jian. And the other real estate developers in that bubble all gradually showed their true colors within 2 years. So Xi Jinping was furious, ordered Zhu Jiar's arrest, and angrily blamed him, saying it was all his fault. Then, after locking him up for 3 years, he was sentenced to life in prison today. What I'm trying to say is, failing in business and being sentenced to life in prison is unthinkable in the United States. In America, that's just called bankruptcy. You settle it through bankruptcy, and you can still make a comeback. So let me translate for the CCP. What is the real crime behind all these 8 major charges? This causes so much trouble for our party. That's the only crime he committed. Do you think I'm wrong? It was all allowed under the CCP system. Everyone was doing it. He was just a bit bolder. He did it for nearly 30 years, and you didn't stop him, but you're stopping him now because he ran up 2.4 trillion in debt and embarrassed the Communist Party. That's why Xi Jinping was furious and had him arrested, angrily blaming him for everything. The CCP created this bubble, and Xi Jinping was the one who popped it. Now that Zhu Jian is sentenced to life, how can you survive in the CCP? How can you survive in communist China? How should we view this? Zhu Jian is 67 years old. With a life sentence in China, according to Chinese law, the earliest he could be paroled is in 13 years. That means if he's very lucky and everything is handled perfectly, he'll be 80 when he's first released. His life is basically over. So honestly, many issues in China are the Communist Party's doing. When things go wrong, they blame others and find a scapegoat to kill off. To be honest, for many of China's problems, if you get rid of the Communist Party, everything becomes easier to handle. Professor Shin Hong-hing once said, "Only without the Communist Party can there be a new China." It's absolutely true. Well, that's my take on trying to clear Zhu Jian's name. Does that make sense? Anyway, let's look at another side of this, which isn't as funny. Of course, I shouldn't treat Zhu Jian's situation as a joke. All in all, these are all unfortunate events. Okay, now about Ata's former Ata, the athletic shoe brand. The former CEO of Ata was just found to have fled. He's a big shot from a $100 billion group. What happened? On August 18th, Xu Yang, the former CEO of the famous Chinese brand Anta, posted on WeChat saying he's moving to Los Angeles to accompany his family for their studies. And the result? Netizens who saw his post realized that when he shared it, he had already left Hong Kong and was over an hour into his flight to Los Angeles. Some say it's because Anta was poorly managed, right? So he left. Look at what he wrote. He said he didn't arrange any farewells because of the guilt of failing trust and a weakness he didn't want to show, wishing everyone well. See, he's saying his time as CEO didn't go smoothly. He resigned last month on July 15th, so that's why he left. He was too ashamed to face his countrymen, so he didn't say goodbye. That's what he wrote. But my question is, would he even dare to say goodbye? If he had dared to say goodbye, he wouldn't have been able to leave at all. Netizens generally believe he only dared to announce his reason for leaving after he was out of Hong Kong, showing it was all carefully planned. He didn't trust China or Hong Kong and had to leave before the strict new entry-exit rules on September 15th. Okay, now let me read a few more examples for you. They're truly shocking. A netizen, an online influencer named Luo Shang Pumu Fan Cheng, gets many complaints. He just received a complaint letter. Let me show you. I'll read it out. It says, "Teacher Luo, on the 18th, which was yesterday, I left from Shanghai Pudong to fly to Seattle." Okay. He said the flight was at 5:24 p.m. When checking in for his boarding pass, the airport staff asked him to fill out an exit information form. It was terrifying, with zero privacy, meaning it was extremely detailed. As a result, while filling out the form, many people on the same flight were stunned, getting stuck at that part of the form. As for me, I tried to stay calm on the surface. I estimated that half the people on the flight were barred from boarding. When we took off, half the seats were empty, and there was a sense of despair. He said the guy in front of him was being questioned. They checked his phone, his social media, and his messaging apps. They didn't find anything, but he was still detained and not allowed to fly. Why was that? Because the police said, "Hey, all the apps on this phone were just installed recently. This is a backup phone. Where's the phone you actually use?" The guy stammered and couldn't give an answer, so he was taken away. Okay, so when it was my turn, they first asked me if I had filled everything out truthfully. I said yes. Then they demanded that I and 20 other people unlock our phones. They took them all into a little dark room for manual and machine inspection. Isn't that scary? So these are all true stories. I believe everything reported to Lu Shang is absolutely true. Also, I actually posted 2 tweets a couple of days ago that went viral online. I haven't even mentioned it to our audience yet. What happened? I have a friend in San Francisco who lives right next to the Chinese consulate in an apartment for seniors. He posted a tweet or sent a message saying that on Monday morning, there was no one at the consulate. Usually, there are 2 very long lines, but there were 0 people. He said, "Look, what does this mean? Everyone is isolating themselves early. People are avoiding it if they can and just aren't going back to China." So I posted it and some netizens challenged me, saying, "That's just what you're saying. Who knows if it's true? You don't even have a photo." And the result? Well, my friend took a photo the next day. This was taken on Tuesday, this past Tuesday at 9:45 in the morning at the San Francisco consulate. Look at the thing at the entrance. What do you call it? The stanchions for the line, those velvet rope stands. Usually there's always a line, and it's always 2 lines deep. Now there's not a single person, just one security guard standing there. So what does that mean? Because people only go to the consulate for 2 reasons, right? First is to apply for a visa. There's no one there, so no one dares to go back. No one dares to apply for a visa to return to China. Second is for passport extensions, but no one can go for that either. Now, why is it that no one is going for passport extensions? Let me tell you, a netizen told me that if you want to renew your passport at the consulate now, which has been a standard service for decades, they won't do it. You have to go back to China to renew it. I asked him, is that for real? Does that actually happen? He said it's absolutely true. He said his family tried using an agency, but the agency said they couldn't get it done and that they had to go back to China. They couldn't renew it. He asked several people, and it was the same for all of them. He said it was never like this before. This was the situation even before the CCP's new entry and exit regulations took effect on September 15th. So it's truly amazing. What has China become now? There's another piece of news from August 16th I haven't told you yet. A netizen shared a video of a Chinese girl crying uncontrollably in front of the camera. It was truly heartbreaking to watch. What happened? This happened on August 15th at Nanning Airport in Guangxi. During the border check, her visa was canceled. She asked what the reason was. The border officer saw she was breaking down and felt bad, so he told her the reason. He said, because someone from your university stayed in Spain and didn't return, there's an order from above. All 60,000 students from your school are banned from leaving the country, regardless of the reason. 60,000 people were implicated. So this girl was definitely studying abroad or traveling, but she couldn't even cry. Have you ever seen this kind of collective punishment? A few days ago, about 10 days ago, someone complained to Lu Xiang, saying he was a Japanese businessman who had been naturalized in Japan for 13 years. He had a business worth 80 million yuan and 40 employees, but after returning to China, he was forced to renounce his Japanese citizenship and restore his Chinese citizenship. He can't go to Japan before 2036, so his entire Japanese business is ruined. So at the time, I think everyone, including myself, was saying, is this even possible? It seemed like someone was just making up stories. To this day, no one has refuted this matter. So it really could be true. So now this whole thing about entering and leaving China is just too scary. It's unbelievable, really terrifying. I mean, can you guys believe it? I find it hard to believe myself. But what was my other comment? You could say it's hard to believe. Oh, how should I put this? I had a comment just now that I want to share because I wrote it down. When the CCP shows its true colors, those who aren't used to it have actually forgotten its history and true nature. It will do these things, and it will do them without hesitation or politeness. People just have to get used to it. I'll say it again. Many of China's problems are the CCP. At this point in the world today, do people still want this CCP? So of course, for the average person, my advice is still the same. Don't enter a dangerous country. Don't live in a chaotic one. Just don't go back. That's how it is for now. The CCP won't last long like this. Okay, next I'll tell you about another news story. Some US news. Let's look back on what's happening in America. California passed a bizarre bill. What is this bizarre bill called? It's called the Ban Nick Shirley Investigation Act. Isn't that bizarre? Of course, that's not its official name, just a nickname. We all know that the young American investigative journalist Nick Shirley has been traveling around investigating corruption as a private citizen. He started in Minnesota, then California, then New York, leaving local governments everywhere in a state of embarrassment. But one government is really tough. Not only was it not embarrassed, it even fought back. The California State Assembly, which is a Democratic supermajority, has officially passed what's being called the Stop Nick Shirley Act and sent it to Governor Newsom for his signature. So obviously, that means it's already passed the Senate. This bill criminalizes the actions of Nick Shirley, who travels around and confronts scammers in person and then posts those videos online. My goodness! And at the same time, the people he questions, those NGOs that receive government funding for so-called immigration services, don't have to disclose their financial situation. So who is the person pushing this bill? It's a California State Assembly member who is the wife of California Attorney General Rob Bonta, named Mia Bonta. So at the same time, the opposition in the California Assembly, the Republicans like Carl DeMaio, tried to speak out about how the bill violates the First Amendment, but they wouldn't even let them talk. Because of their supermajority, they can control the legislative agenda and won't even let you speak. So what exactly is going on? Nick Shirley said this in April, but it's very interesting. This Mia Bonta, her husband is the Attorney General of California, who goes after criminals. Their family's goals should have been to prosecute and handle fraud, ensuring there's so little fraud in the state that they can sleep soundly and do their jobs well. But as it turns out, his wife is making laws that allow fraud to continue to exist in California. I'll just comment with one sentence. When you can't solve the problem, you solve the person reporting it. California actually made Nick Shirley's behavior a crime. Isn't that just bizarre? So what's going to happen next? It'll 100% be taken to court and then all the way to the Supreme Court. You're saying that just asking someone if they've committed fraud can actually be a crime in America? Can California really pull this off? I don't think they can, but this whole thing is just very, very bizarre. Okay, next I'll tell you about the increased deportations within the United States, which have sparked a lot of reactions. So this is something posted by Benny Johnson, a million-follower influencer. He's very close to the government, so he often gets inside information. Let me read the post he wrote. He said, I just spoke with a senior official from the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, and the deportation data they shared with me is shocking. Just last week, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, DHS, deported 27,000 illegal immigrants, which is an average of 3,600 people a day. As you know, when Trump took office, his goal for DHS was 2,000 people a day. They've now reached 3,600 a day, with an estimated 1.4 million deportations for the year. At this point, he says there are still 69,000 illegal immigrants detained in DHS jails awaiting deportation. But you hardly hear a word about this in the mainstream media. Why is that? He said the DHS official told him, we're using what we call a low-profile tactic. We're everywhere in major U.S. cities, but we don't tell anyone. When we enforce the law, we wear plain clothes and drive beat-up old cars. We move fast, so no one sees what we're doing. There are no dramatic scenes for the media to sensationalize. And there's no so-called media circus.